Well, that was a wildly inconsistent road trip, wasn't it? And poor Lukas Dostal, what are you guys doing to him? We'll talk about all of that on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oi. Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for over a decade, and this has been almost or more than half a decade of just awful Ducks hockey, but we're still here. We're still going to talk about this team. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets after your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com right now to get started. All right, let's just get right into it. This last road trip the Ducks were on as we record over this weekend is just putrid, awful, especially the last game on this trip. The Ducks are lucky that they got 3 points out of this trip because they did not play for a lot of times like a team that was trying to get multiple points on a road trip. This is becoming too reminiscent of a Ducks team that you would have seen on Dallas Eakins last season. What am I implying there? I'm implying that the players got to play better, the coach has got to do better. Everybody has got to do better on this Ducks team right now because these kind of losses are unacceptable. The amount of shots that they're getting outshot is unacceptable. The amount of times that the Ducks have just been outshot almost 2-1 or out-attempted almost 2-1 is also unacceptable. Lukas Dostal being left out to dry time and time again is also unacceptable. So my big takeaway from the Ducks road trip overall is the lack of urgency. I know that these are professional athletes and they are trying their best, but there are too many times during games or too many shifts where there is just no urgency, even to the point where the Ducks players get called out by their own announcers. Their own announcers begin to call them out. Not in those exact words, but there are little subtle messages here and there. They're not picking up their feet. They're not skating hard. They're not getting to the dirty areas. All of these things were said at some point during this road trip. All of those things. And that's not saying what they're thinking, but I know what several Ducks fans are thinking. And you've got to just realize, yeah, the effort at times, at least according to the eye test, has not seemingly been there. Now, who's to say that there is an effort? I mean, yes, these guys are pro athletes. They probably are putting forth some kind of effort, but there was only one back-to-back during this road trip, and one of those back-to-backs was a New York, New Jersey. There was a day off. To be fair, the Ducks did win that last game in New York on the day off, but that was an extremely inconsistent game because it looked like the Ducks shouldn't have won that game on paper. They probably should have lost that game. The only reason they won that game was because of their amazing power play. And I got to give credit to that unit on the power play. They looked fantastic. The McTavish, Terry, Frankie, Leo, Zell's combo looked good in New York. There was still a day off between New York and Pittsburgh, but they were lucky. I mean, they were really lucky to leave Pittsburgh with a point. Because Lukas Dostal, my other biggest takeaway, is Dostal is saving their butts. Dostal, at the end of this road trip, is leading the league in several categories, leading the league in high danger shots allowed, almost leading the league in high danger save percentage, almost leading the league in goals against, is leading the league in save percentage. These are very high up there categories. And yes, a lot of the league is taking notice, but there are still some commenters out there on the Twitter sphere saying, who is this guy? Who is Dostal? Even one of my Locked On colleagues kind of sort of implied that, oh, this guy came out of nowhere. No, he didn't. If you've been paying attention, or if some of the other hosts that supposedly say, oh, they're paying attention to this. No, they're not paying attention. And I'm going to directly call out some of the other Locked On hosts right now. They're not paying attention to the Ducks at all. And why would they? Because they've been terrible. Lukas Dostal, for the better part of a month, has been leading the league in goals saved above average. Right now, Dostal is leading the league in goals saved above average. He's been doing that for the last week. If you've been paying attention at all to that particular statistic, even some of the basic analytics, you would have seen that Lukas Dostal is either leading the league or in the top 3 in that category. The Ducks should have been scored on at least 15 more times than they actually have been. And that is thanks to Lukas Dostal. Okay? He has been the guy. I've been insistent since the preseason that Dostal should be the number 1 starter for the Anaheim Ducks, and he is more than proving it. Also, something to keep in mind, John Gibson was with the Ducks on this trip. He could have come back at any time. But even Gibby has to see, well, crap. Dostal's outplaying not just me. Dostal's outplaying everybody in the entire National Hockey League right now. So give Gibby another week or so off. Let Dostal keep going. Although I've got to be a little bit, not depressed, but a little bit disappointed if I was Lukas Dostal, because he is trying everything in his power to get the Ducks some kind of wins. To leave this road trip with 3 points seems like a miracle. And now they're home for half a dozen games. We'll see if the Ducks can even scrounge together 4 points on a 6-game homestand. Am I being too pessimistic here? I probably am. Am I sounding a little angry here? Possibly. Am I holding back a little bit? Also, yes, because this team should be better. This team should absolutely be better. After all the promise that was made in the offseason that this was going to be a team that was going to be more aggressive, that was not going to get trounced on like this, that was not going to get outshot like this. The promises of these young goal scorers that were going to put up massive, massive points this season, it just has not happened yet. Cutter Gauthier still hasn't got a goal this season, although he has been shooting the puck a lot. He has been attempting the puck a lot, so I'll give him credit for at least trying. Some of that is bad luck. Some of that is just not full 100% effort on their part. Yeah, it's very hard for me to try to stay positive, folks. It is. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a reset. We're going to head to the first intermission, and I'm going to talk about the last couple of games. Well, more so the last game on the road trip in detail, because there was a lot to take away from that last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from the Gametime app. And folks, I'm just going to say, if you haven't used the Gametime app, what are you waiting for? Because that is your one spot to get all the great deals on sporting event tickets for basketball, football, hockey, baseball. I just went to the World Series and saved a ton of money on, actually Gametime had some very good last minute deals, and they even had their hot zone deals. Prices seemingly getting further and further on discount the closer it was to the game. And that was a Game 5 victory that several fans getting tickets at discounted prices thanks to Gametime. So if you haven't already, download the Gametime app. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and save $20 on your first purchase. Once again, that is Gametime. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to episode number 949 of Locked On Anaheim Ducks. Once again, you're locked in with Jason Hernandez. Let's talk about that last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is a home that John Gibson certainly likes. Before I get to that, I just want to recap the shots on goal from the previous 3 games. So the Ducks outshot the Rangers 33-32, probably their best game of the season up to now. So 32-33. Then they were outshot 34-26 against the Devils. Then they were outshot 41-22 against the New York Islanders. On this one, they were outshot 45-23 in favor of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was getting worse and worse as the road trip went on. So I am not even going to do the math right now, but just a little bit of quick math. Let's see, 86-34, that's 120. That's 152 shots allowed across 4 games. That is all, actually, just quick math. That's 38 shots allowed per game on this road trip. Okay, what are we, the 2023 Anaheim Ducks? Are we back to that team that is breaking records for most shots allowed? Because that's what it looked like the last couple of games. That's what it really looked like against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just to give shots on goal, just in general, here's how it went down by period. 18-7 in favor of Pittsburgh in the first period. Then 11-9 in the second. Then 14-7 in the third. And then 2-0 in overtime. You probably know where that's ending. On this Halloween night, the Ducks were spooked. The Penguins were also spooked because there was some kind of force going on between Lukas Dostal and the net. Something weird was happening here. I think the weirdest thing happening here was the Penguins probably should have scored more goals, and there were a couple of moments where even just looking, how did the puck not go through? How? Pittsburgh had several opportunities, several high danger opportunities in close, and nothing just seemed to cross. It was like some weird mystical hullabaloo that happened. Now, I will give credit to Lukas Dostal. He did make a plethora of fantastic high danger saves. To be honest, this stat hurt me when I saw it. This one hurts. The Penguins had 23. I'm trying not to. Oh, wow. I did not mean to laugh there. The Pittsburgh Penguins had 23 high danger chances in that game. I have said several times, okay, there's 14, 15, 16, 17, 23. The Penguins had the same amount of high danger chances that the Ducks had shots in this game. That is a painfully laughable stat. How? It still baffles me. It's going to baffle me for a while that the Ducks are allowing that many high danger chances. The shot attempts on this game were a ridiculous 97-51 hat tip to Natural Stat Trick for providing that. 97-51 shot attempts. Oh boy. But I will give some credit if I can. At this point, I'm just loopy. I just really am. Shot attempts for the Ducks on this one, only 51. The most shot attempts, I guess, would go to a couple of players, and not much else. Not much else. The individual Corsi 4, Cutter Gauthier. You ready for this? 13. Cutter Gauthier had 13 shot attempts. He did get an assist, but to have that many shot attempts, he's still missing the net. I mean, he got 5 shots on goal, 13 shot attempts, so he's missed a lot of shots, but I will give him credit for at least trying, and I'll give him credit for having the balls to at least put something towards the net. Him and Troy Terry. Troy Terry had 7 shot attempts. No one else had more than 3. What? Yeah. By the way, Zegras got 3 on this game, as well as Dumoulin and Killorn. But this has been a 2-man show for the Ducks pretty much all season long. Hey, at least Killorn got a goal on this one in the first period. Guess who got the apples on this one? The aforementioned Trevor Zegras and Cutter Gauthier, who did not go shot first, even though there was players around him. So he kind of had like a self bounce to the corner. And this is why I'm loving Trevor Zegras' game so much this season. And I promise I will do a whole breakdown of Trevor Zegras later on this week. But Zegras has been doing the job behind the net, and he's been getting pinpoint passes left and right to find the open man. This one was a perfect pass to Alex Killorn to make it 1-0 Ducks early on the game. At the time, the Ducks were fairly-ish even at times. And then after that goal was scored, The Ducks did what they always do, at least as far as this season, after scoring a goal. What do you think's going to happen? What's going to happen? Oh, yeah, they're going to shut down. The Ducks did what the Ducks do. They shut down on defense immediately after a goal and just allow a plethora of shot attempts. It's exactly what happened. Again. Now, Jason, didn't this happen? Yes, it did happen recently. In fact, I'm going to go back to that. Remember the New Jersey Devils game where after the Ducks scored first, and then they were outshot like 28-4 or 28-6 or 30-something to 6 or something stupid like that? Yeah, that's a bad trend. If I'm going to point to a bad trend along the season, that might be the worst of them, is they score a goal, they take a lead, and then they relax. They just completely relax. Sound familiar, Ducks fans? Well, it should, because those of you everydayers of the podcast have heard me harp on this over and over again. There's no time to relax. The good teams, the really good teams, once they score a goal, they should be able to smell blood. They should be able to stomp on their throats, step on their necks, and just take complete control of this game while the other team is still demoralized after giving up a goal. What is that lacking? That is lacking the Mamba mentality. Yes, going to basketball here. That's lacking the Mamba mentality. That is lacking the killer instinct. This team does not have a killer instinct yet. Could they develop a killer instinct? Yes, they could. These guys are still young. Do they have it yet? No. They don't. They don't have the killer instinct yet. They're allowing teams to come back into games way too much. It absolutely happened on this one too. Third period. That's how long it took. This was Lukas Dostal hanging on to dear life, because that second period was all Lukas Dostal. Third period, it became the Sidney Crosby show again. Sidney Crosby, nice deflection from Mark Rechelik. That made it a 1-1 tie. And then Sidney Crosby in overtime. So he got a shot on net, took a weird bounce. Cutter Gauthier tried to corral the puck, and that's just a bad turnover. That's a youth play. That is a rookie mistake play where Sid the Kid just took advantage of a bad mistake by Cutter Gauthier, who probably should have driven the puck either along the boards or away from Sidney Crosby, because that's the most dangerous player on the ice right there. Yes, you have other players on there, but you have Cody Glass at the same time, but don't let it get to Sidney Crosby. And Cutter will learn. Cutter will learn from these mistakes. But that bad mistake cost Ducks the game. 2-1 was the final score. Ouch. Let's just head to the second intermission right now. Let's do that. Stay locked in. And now a brief word from FanDuel, which is America's #1 sportsbook. Look, FanDuel has all the action for the start of the basketball season, the hockey season. Football season is right in the middle when you can begin to see the contenders and the pretenders. Which one is your favorite team? Well, you know what? You can go to FanDuel right now and check out all the latest lines. You could check out all of the play-by-play, which is on the same window as all those odds. So if you're not familiar already, FanDuel has all the latest props. They have all the futures as to who's going to make it to the Super Bowl, who's going to win futures games, who's going to win some of these future Laker games. Are they going to keep up with the start? How about the Warriors? They had a hot start as well. How about them Vegas Golden Knights? They're off to a hot start too. So you could check out all the latest lines at FanDuel. So if you sign up right now, you can get $150 in bonus bets with your first winning $5 bet. Once again, that is FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And please, folks, please gamble responsibly. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, you're locked in with Jason Hernandez on episode number 949 of Locked On Anaheim Ducks. So we were going to have a separate Ducks Gulls podcast, but we're just kind of going to mash both of them in because I got some overall thoughts on road trips for both the Ducks and the Gulls. So I'm going to start with overall thoughts on the Ducks road trip. I thought it was an uneven road trip to go from their best effort against New York, against the New York Rangers. That was their best effort all season long. And then to follow that up with one of their poorest efforts. Yes, it was the back end of a back-to-back, but that was still about as bad a game as I've seen the Ducks play all season long. Then to go into Nassau, not Nassau anymore, but to go into Long Island and have that kind of performance. They got lucky on that one. And then Pittsburgh, they kind of gave that game away a little bit and had some bad effort at times. So if I was to have an overall on the Ducks road trip, it was uneven. It was uneven and just seemed to get worse and worse. The effort, as I mentioned, has got to be better. All right. Overall thoughts on the Gulls, because we're just going to wrap this up quickly. The Gulls had a road trip recently that went about as poorly as you would expect because of who they were playing. This 5-game road trip that they were on, I did talk about the last game against the Condors. I didn't really get to talk a whole lot about the last 4 games, and they were all very quick, 4 games in 6 days. This was a fast road trip. There was 2 up in Abbotsford against the Canucks, 2 against the Calgary Wranglers, who are probably the best team in the American Hockey League so far. And that is not just me saying that. They are that good. Going into the weekend set, the Gulls had they had a decent enough power play. They were still looking solid enough on the power play. That was, I think, one of their best aspects going into it, is that there was the effort and there was good speed, good forecheck. But that's about where it ends, because Calgary just outclassed the San Diego Gulls on both of those games in general. So I will see that one of my favorite things so far is, at the time, the Gulls had a 22% power play at the time. The penalty killing, that's been the biggest Achilles heel for the San Diego Gulls of the season. At the time, they were at a 66% penalty kill. As of right now, the penalty kill is sitting still pretty low. It's around 70%. That's really bad. It's definitely the worst in the division by a long shot. The only team worse than them on the PK right now is in the Western Conference, and that's the Chicago Wolves. And right there with them, the Cleveland Monsters off to a bad start on the PK. The Utica Comets off to a bad start, both hovering around 70%. But the Gulls are right there. They're a bottom 5 penalty killing team. They've probably got to change up the personnel a little bit on the PK, and I'll dive much more into that on the next Locked On Gulls. But that's going to be something that they desperately need to improve on, is the penalty kill, because they're giving up way too many of those easy power play goals. Now, granted, 2 of those games were against the Calgary Wranglers, who are very good on the power play. Just to quickly go over all those games, the Gulls were outshot in their 3 losses, or in 2 of the losses, by a lot. They were more uneven than the Anaheim Ducks. They lost 3-1 in Abbotsford, then they won 4-1, easily their best. Then they lost 4-3, and then lost 6-2. Goaltending is an issue. It's a big issue. Oscar Dansk just got worked in his return game against the Calgary Wranglers. He allowed 6 goals on 42 shots. Yes, stop me if you've heard this before. The Gulls were outshot 42-29 in that final game in that 6-2 loss on Halloween night. Did I want to go back and watch that game? I didn't, but I eventually did. The big thing about that game was, well, first off, it was the William Stromgren show. He was amazing right there. My other big takeaway is that the Gulls just weren't putting a whole lot on net. They were missing a lot of shots. Shot attempts were not as much of a disparity as the shots were. Yes, shots were 42-29, but if shot attempts were being tracked here, it was almost even with a slight edge to Calgary. They're just missing the net right now. That's as simple as that. But Calgary just outclassed San Diego in this one. As far as the other game is concerned, San Diego did put up 45 shots in their other game. Most of those shots were kind of along past the dots, so not the greatest opportunities. But I will give the Gulls credit. I'll give them credit for this. They had a plethora of great shot attempts, especially in the second and third periods, where there was a ton of shots in the home plate area. Calgary, I mean, there was not much high danger opportunity for Calgary in this game. There's definitely a couple of goals, especially the last one. The last one, I think he's going to want back. Callie Klang let in a goal that was in the high slot, like not the mid slot, not the low slot, the high slot. It was about a ways away from the net, and it wasn't in the high danger or in the home plate area. That's one he's going to want back. The other one that he's for sure going to want back, second period, the goal against Solovyov. If there was a goal all season that Callie Klang wants back, it is that one. So I hate to say it, but another thing for San Diego right now, goaltending. Yeah, the puppy agrees with that too. Goaltending is a big issue right now. Callie Klang is not having it, and Oscar Dansk not having it either. All right, we're just going to wrap up here very quickly, but I want to thank you all for listening. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, ad-free on Amazon. We're also on YouTube. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter X at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter X is at LO_X, and you could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is so appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason Hernandez, saying have a great rest of the day, folks. Please remember to be safe out there. Be kind to one another. Be kind to yourselves. And Ducks and Gulls fly together.